Welcome to video 2 of chapter 6. In this video, we will look at development of the senses and specifically, the state of the senses, soon after birth in infancy. And so we will begin with vision, and this is the least developed of the senses at birth. At birth, their visual acuity is 2400. So you've heard of 20/20 vision, and that means that if a normal person looks at something 20 yards away, you can see it just as clearly at 20 yards away. I mean, like, that means you have good normal vision. And 2400 means that, the level of detail that you see looking at something, let's say 400 feet away, which is a little bit of a distance, and so it won't be as detailed. But I mean, that's the same as what the infant can see 20 feet away. So like you can you could be looking way off in the distance at something, and that's like them looking at something close. Anyways, 2400s would be, for an adult, would be considered legally blind. Legal blindness is 2200 or above. In the 2200 or above in the or worse in the best seeing eye is considered legal blindness. So basically, infants are legally blind, even though they are going to get some. It's not like they're not seeing anything. They're just seeing very blurry, colorless images. Okay, they do have visual preferences, though, that they are born with. They like high contrast, and they like faces. And high contrast meaning, dark light contrast. So, imagine something like a checkerboard, a black-white checkerboard, or like something like that. If the squares are big enough, then they would like it. I mean, they could see the alternating black and white, and they like that kind of contrast, dark with light. This is suggested that this may be one of the reasons why infants like to look at eyes of people. That they often will look you in the eye, because your eye has a dark center and surrounded by white. I don't know, white pupil or what I don't know the technical terms, but the white part of the eye. So anyways, it's dark and white, dark and light. So they're attracted to high contrast, and also, as I mentioned here, they also are attracted to looking at faces, even though they're not really clear, because everything's blurry when they're first born, but they still, there's something about faces that they are like automatically drawn towards, and they will choose looking at face over other, equally complex, random designs or things or patterns or something. Until 3 months of age, they can only focus on objects 8 to 10 inches in front of them. So 8 to 10 inches, so less than a foot. It is a nice distance, though, if you think about it. If a mother is breastfeeding her infant, I mean, the position of the head when it's on the nipple, if you're looking down at your baby's face as they're breastfeeding, if they were to look up at your face, the distance between the faces is right around that 8 to 10 inches range. So it's, maybe it's not by accident or a bit. It's like when they breastfeed, your face just happens to be in the range that they can focus on. And so this is why baby will often look up at you when you're if you're holding them at your breast, or if you're just holding them in your arms, they can look up in your face and you're about the right distance away. Okay. Hearing. Hearing begins prenatally, so they are so the fetus does start hearing in the womb. Um, the fetus therefore becomes attuned to the mother's voice because they are, whenever the mother's talking, they are getting a sense of the mother's voice. I mean, it's not going to sound the same as it is to you in the world if a woman's talking to you, and compared to how it's going to sound in the womb, but they're still going to pick up on the timbre and intonation patterns and like certain aspects of the voice. Um, Besides hearing the mother's voice in the womb, they will also hear the mother's heartbeat, the mother's digestion. They'll hear other outside sounds if they're loud enough. If you got loud music on, or um, I don't know, if you're standing outside and a fire engine goes by. I mean, so they will pick up on loud outside noises as well. Um, and so it's not a quiet environment with the mother's heart constantly beating, with digestion going on and off, and with the baby hearing the mother's voice whenever she talks. And I mean, it's not really a quiet environment inside the womb. And so it's suggested that this is maybe why some babies need a certain level of noise in order to go to sleep. So many mothers have discovered that if you put some kind of background noise on, rather than having it, perfectly quiet, it actually helps many infants fall asleep. It's because they're used to a noisy environment. I mean, the mother's heart never stops beating. They always have some sound that they can hear in the womb. So it's a good tip for new mothers to put a little rhythmic background noise in the background. Maybe something that sounds a little bit like a heartbeat, for instance. If you want your baby to sleep. Okay. Smell and taste. There are preferences for the mother's smell that they are born with. They know their mother's smell and they prefer it over other mothers' smells. I mean, what I'm saying is that they can tell their own mother's breast milk from other mothers' breast milk, even get this, even before they began to breastfeed. It has to do with the smell um, of the breast milk. So, like, if before they even feed, I mean, they've done studies where they give them a choice. You can feed on this nipple, or you feed from this nipple, or feed from this nipple. The one that contains the mother's breast milk is the one that they prefer. They also prefer the smell of their mother's amniotic fluid compared to other mothers' amniotic fluid. So they've been in that environment. They've learned the smell prior to birth. I mean, they're not experiencing amniotic fluid after birth, but they've done a test where once again they give them different amniotic fluids, one from their mother, one from other mother, some other ones from other mothers, and they can tell their own mother's um, amniotic fluid. So they're already attuned to the smell of the breast milk of the mother. They know their amniotic fluid. So it just shows that right, like they don't have to rely on experience post birth. They've already been gathering experience in the womb, and the brain has been adjusting, to this early experience. So this is some of the brain expectant development that goes on. We're expected to hear certain things in the womb. We're expected to be aware of our mother's amniotic fluid. We pick up on our mother's smell while we're in the womb, our mother's voice, etc. Also, babies taste what their mothers eat prenatally in the amniotic fluid. Remember, at one point they engage in breathing of the amniotic fluid. it works their lungs, and so they are taking the amniotic fluid into their mouth, and so this is why they taste it. I mean, they're not holding their breath in the when they were in the womb and covered and surrounded by amniotic fluid. I mean, they're not. When I say they're not holding their breath, obviously they're not getting air when they breathe in the amniotic fluid, but they're not. It's not like they don't open their mouth and take it in. So they learn what the mother's been eating through the taste, because it makes the taste of whatever she eats makes its way into the amniotic fluid, and also through the breast milk, as it says here, after birth. Um, and so, and they do prefer those tastes. And so, this is how an infant develops a preference for the taste of their local food. Um, if you grew up in, one country, maybe typical diets are very spicy. I mean, that baby will be fine with those spicy foods after they're born. Whereas a baby that grows up in a culture where that doesn't use a lot of heavy spices, I mean, they would not like any kind of spicy food or heavy spices. So you become attuned to the food that's going to be available to you, prior to being born, through the amniotic fluid, and then soon after birth through the breast milk. This is a good tip for mothers. If you want your baby to like certain vegetables, let's say you say, I want a baby that likes broccoli. I mean, you just make sure you eat a lot of broccoli before they're born and when you're breastfeeding. And so not only are you transferring the food, but this causes um, a preference in the babies. They will like that food. Okay. Let's go on to touch. I'm not going to spend much time here, but there's been interesting studies showing the benefits of massage for premature babies. It improves their functioning. So very obviously very gentle massage for premature babies, but something about just the rubbing of their skin, and um, it stimulates their development, and so it is a fairly regular practice for premature babies, especially ones that are in danger um, and behind in development. I mean, they will be given gentle massage sessions. Babies do feel pain. This was actually in doubt at some points. I mean, there was times where people weren't sure because it's not like the babies could really tell us, and so people used to say, "Oh, babies can't." I don't remember anything from when I was a baby, so babies don't really feel anything the same way. They haven't developed, their pain senses. And anyways, we now know that they do feel pain. This has helped to change the practice of circumcision, at least in certain cultures and among certain groups. That whereas they never would have thought about giving anesthesia in the past. I mean, there are dangers to anesthesia, but now they often give a local anesthetic um, because they know it's going to be a painful procedure. And so when babies cry out that they're being circumcised, I mean, it's hurting them. And it used to be that you just rub a little ice cube on it or something, and that was the treatment. They certainly are. Their pain is helped by just being held, particularly skin to skin contact. It really does wonders. And this kind of goes hand in hand with the massage idea. I mean, holding a baby against your skin, like particularly against your chest, like when without clothing in the way, like skin to skin. I mean, this is used very often now. This is also used with premature babies, and I guess it's the same idea as massage in a sense. It stimulates them to go against the skin. It also helps things like them regulating their breathing. I mean, because they get in tune. If they're pressed up against your chest, they get in tune with the rhythm of your heartbeat and the rhythm of your breathing, and you kind of help to regulate the baby's breathing, and so it's shown wonders, and it's really used particularly in like third world countries that don't have modern incubators like we do in the U.S. It's kind of like a substitute for an incubator, doing to go long periods of holding the baby against your chest. Um, okay, and finally, just a bit about cross-modal transfer of perception. Um, so our senses cross over, meaning that we can visually recognize an object that we have just touched and not seen before, and vice versa. Imagine, for instance, let's just use an apple versus an orange. Imagine you come from a country where you've never seen an apple or an orange. Okay, and you're blindfolded, and I put an apple into your hand, and you get to feel it, and I put an orange into your hand, and you get to feel it, and then I take the objects away, and I unblindfold you, and you say, which one did, or I guess I should let you just feel one object. So let's just say you felt the apple. Then I show you an orange in that apple. You'll be able to pick out that even though you've never seen an apple or an orange, you'll be able to pick out that, oh, it was the apple I felt. I can see that it looks smooth. And that's what I felt in my hand. We can also do the opposite. So let's say you've never seen an apple or orange. I show you both. You don't get to touch them. So it's like, look at these exotic fruits that you've never seen. Like, you go, oh, they look different. Anyways, and then I blindfold you and I put one of them in your hand. I mean, you will know which one it is. So I taught you that this orange one's called an orange, this red one's called an apple, and I put it in your hand and you feel the dimples and you say this one's an orange because you were able to see them. So you have an expectation of what it's going to feel like. So we get a sense of what something's going to feel like just by observing it. We know what something's going to look like just by feeling it. So there's been research, does this happen for babies, infants? And they show one direction of cross-modal transfer perception, but not the others. So infants, and this was right from birth, they can visually recognize something that they've only touched but not seen before. Meaning that if they've touched an apple, they've touched an orange, and then for the very first time they see them, they will know which one's which. If they touched an orange, they'll know which one was the one they touched. Okay, anyways, so this is telling us, actually, before I go on to that, what's telling us, okay, they can't do the opposite. They can't recognize by touch something they've only seen. So if they see an apple and an orange, then you blindfold that little infant, and you put one in their hand, they're not going to know which one it is, even though they've seen them and they've seen, the skin looks different. I mean, they still won't be able to. It doesn't transfer that way for the infant, so it goes one direction. So touch tells the infant what something should look like. So and infants do a lot of touching, right? They like to touch things, so they are learning, even by touch, what things look like. Even if they're in the dark and they're touching things, they're learning what they will look like. By the way, just kind of side note, babies like to put a lot of things in their mouths, right? It might be daddy's keys, it might be a pen, like maybe like a coin. I mean, like they put stuff in their mouths, right? A lot of people think, well, they're trying to eat these things. I mean, they're not trying to, just to be clear, in case you might think that they're not trying to eat them. They are melding them. They are touching them with their mouth. Their mouth is more sensitive than their underdeveloped finger sensory receptors. They actually experience more touch sensations in their mouth. So when a baby puts something in its mouth and kind of moves their mouth up and down, they're feeling it. That is the major purpose when they're melding on an object. It's about feeling it's about feeling the object. So we know babies like to feel objects, and what we've learned from this cross-modal perception is that they're learning what things should look like by feeling them. But once again, the opposite doesn't work. Seeing something doesn't tell them how it should feel to the touch. Okay, and that concludes video 2 of chapter 6.